evening, everybody. My name is Abhijit Roy. I have a background in media and entertainment, and I have an undying love for animated movies. I am currently working with Aurofilm, and through this association, I'm hoping to screen many animated movies here at MNC. Today, the movie that we are screening for you is called Wolfwalkers. This is a third in a trilogy of animated movies that were created by an independent Irish animation studio called Saloon. And it was preceded by two other beautiful movies, The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. We have screened both these movies here. This movie was released in the year 2020 at the Toronto International Film Festival. And it went on to garner a lot of critical acclaim. It went on to get nominated for the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, and the BAFTA, which is basically the British Academy Awards. Through this movie, the director Tom Moore and his co-director Ross Stewart wanted to tell a story which addressed the threat of human civilization on nature and animal extinction. The story follows a young hunter apprentice who accompanies her father to come to Ireland in a time of superstition and magic to wipe out the last remaining wolf pack. Once the story starts, the magical things start happening. So that's pretty much the overview of the story. This movie is very dear to me, and along with screening movies here, I also do film appreciation for these movies. So I'm doing the film appreciation for this movie tomorrow at Aurofilm at 5 in the evening. And I will take this opportunity to invite all of you who are interested in knowing how this movie was made, the idea, the philosophy, and the cultural impact of this movie. Tomorrow at 5 at Aurofilm in Kalabhumi. In the meantime, please enjoy the movie and welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abhijit Roy, and as always, I will give my background as I have worked in media and entertainment, and I currently work with Aurofilm to showcase animated movies, which are very dear to me. I love animated movies. I love showing it to people, and the third thing that I love doing is I love talking about animated movies. So this association with Aurofilm actually gives me the opportunity to talk about movies. And today we are going to do a film appreciation for a movie called Wolfwalkers. We screened this movie yesterday at MMC, and thank you all for coming. And diving deep into it, first I want to get everybody in the mood. So if Philippe could play a file for me.
Can you smell me? Of course, everybody can. Well, close your eyes. You don't need your eyes to see. And you can hear every little thing that moves. And your paws can hear through the earth. We're stronger now. My heart still beats. And you have 4 legs now, so you can run really fast and jump so high. My mind still
So that is a small clip from the movie itself. This was hand animated, and it plays on the music, beautiful song by a singer Aurora, Running with the Wolves. And it really, when this scene comes up in the movie, it really puts people in the mood of, knowing more about the wolves. Anyways, moving on. This movie was directed by Tom Moore. Tom Moore is basically the whole and soul of Cartoon Saloon. He directed, came up with the idea, wrote the story, and produced all three movies in this trilogy. And he usually did this in association with different people. So usually an animated movie is not directed by one person. Usually you have two or more directors directing an animated movie. And in this particular case, he co-directed the movie with his long-term art director, Ross Stewart. Ross Stewart has been an art director in all three movies, including this one. And once Tom Moore and Ross Stewart got together and came up with the idea for the Wolfwalkers, the script for the movie was written by Will Collins. Will Collins again has credit on all three movies as the script writer. The idea for this movie came to them while they were making Song of the Sea. And similarly, this idea for Song of the Sea came while they were making The Secret of Kells. This movie was created by an independent Irish animation film studio called Cartoon Saloon. This studio was primarily built for making these movies. The director and his, at that time, friend Paul Young got together and they wanted to create these kind of movies because they felt that the current generation, the future generations, are slowly losing touch from our folklore. And one of the concerns that the director had was that as we are losing touch with our folklores, we are also losing touch with nature. Because these folklores were mostly written around the interactions of humans with nature. Okay, so this is the reason that they actually created this studio. And this is based out of a small town called Kilkenny in Ireland. And over a period of time, because of the work that they have done, the three movies and one more movie called Breadwinner, they have actually gained a lot of critical acclaim and global recognition. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a small clip of their work. And this will show you the broad range of work they've been doing. They started off as a small studio doing work for other studios, which will also be in the showreel. And you will see some clips from the work that they have done for their own movies. Okay, so as you can see, their entire portfolio is basically hand-drawn animation. So they have stuck to that style of animation from the conception of the studio. They have never changed it because they found that telling stories through 2D animation and hand-drawn animation worked best. That was, I mean, their personal opinion, of course. But they also felt that the movies have a timeless feeling. You know, you could make a movie today and you could make another 2D animated movies 10 years from now, and it would seem like both of them could have been made in the same year. So they feel that these 2D animation, in one of the interviews, the director actually quoted, mentioned two of Studio Ghibli movies, uh, Princess Mononoke and Ponyo. And he said, if you look at those movies, they seem like they could have been made in the same year. So so his inclination towards 2D hand-drawn animation was because these movies are timeless. Moving on. Okay, so once they started doing all these work for other studios, eventually they got enough budget to do their own movie, and this was the first movie that they made, The Secret of Kells. This is the name of the movie, and it is based on this book. And this movie basically tells the story of how this book was created. This was the first movie that they made. Now, the good thing that happened is that once they made this movie, and it mostly went under the radar of most of the world till it got a limited release in the US. And once it got a limited release in the US, it made it eligible to be nominated for an Oscar. And it actually got nominated. So it was in the race and it got nominated for an Oscar. So once the movie got nominated for an Oscar, these guys really, came on the radar of Hollywood. And then they could get more budget to make the future movies that they made. So this was really the very first film they made, was really actually a very big step for them. Just to give you comparison between the movies that were Oscar nominated and the movie which actually won the Oscar that year, the difference in budget is huge. So you can see that just the production cost of making a 2D hand-drawn animation is, in this case, was 7 million, as opposed to the mainstream Pixar Hollywood movie Up was 175 million. And just so you know that Up actually went on to win the Oscar that year for the best animated movie. So this is just to give you an idea about how the industry is. In my last presentation, I had actually delved more deeper into how the 3D animation movies have affected the industry and how 2D hand-drawn animations are actually suffering because of that. And just because those movies are commercially more successful, the 2D hand-drawn animation movies have actually taken a back seat. And I didn't want to get again into that because it takes a little while. If you are interested in seeing what I spoke about, the video recording of the previous presentation is available on the Aurofilm YouTube channel, and you can see it. It's a bit long, so please see it at your leisure. We actually had a 2-hour presentation last time, and this time we are going to have a 1-hour presentation. So coming back to the presentation, this whole idea of creating 2D animated movies based on folklore, when they started doing this, they were only planning to do one movie with this idea and then move on to other ideas. But by the time they finished making Secret of Kells, the directors actually had an experience which I talk about in detail in my presentation for Secret of the Song of the Sea, which led to them making another movie in the same vein, as in based on Irish folklore. And by the time they were making this movie, they got together. So in this case, the art director, Ross Stewart, who was doing art direction for Song of the Sea, and Tom Ross had a discussion about the threat of human civilization on nature and animal extinction. So animal extinction and our effect on deforestation, they were having a discussion like that. And they ended up deciding that, why don't we make a movie about around this idea? Why don't we look around to find if we can find some cultural reference in our folklores, and then maybe we can put together everything that we learned while making the first and the second movie, technology-wise, skill-wise, because they were getting better as they were making more movies. And why don't we put everything that we learned in those two movies and make a new movie, make a third movie and make it a trilogy. So the triptych is complete, and we can, maybe someday present it as a trilogy. But just to let you know that initially that was not the idea. They never planned to make a trilogy. It just evolved. As an evolution, it happened. And that's how we now have 3 movies. So 2009, 2014, and 2020 were when these movies were released. Now, coming back to the idea, how they got the idea, the idea was basically they were getting very affected by the enslavement and hunting of animals. In some cases for fun, in some cases because people would go into a new area and to settle down and make shelters and all, they had to cut forests, and they had to kill the animals which were in those forests. And these were the discussions which led to the making of the movie. So I'll show you some imagery which will give you an idea. So when they're making animated movies and such ideas come up, they actually talk to concept designers, and these artists come up with some concept designs to support the idea. So I'll show you a few of the concept designs that these artists came up with. So this is for show and game, that they were killing animals, deforestation around new settlements. And basically what happens is, as you do this, it starts affecting the animals, and they start reacting to what is going on. Sometimes they attack, sometimes they run away, sometimes they are just killed in the action. And the reference to all this that they found in their history, in Ireland's history and folklore, was the British invasion of the islands, where there was a documentary called Land of the Wolves, which they came across, which actually documented James Cromwell's invasion into Ireland and how he came into Ireland. And the first thing he did was he started wiping out wolf packs as a show to intimidate people, that if you don't bend to my command, I will wipe you out. So as a show of aggression, he started wiping out the wolf packs. There was a documentary on this, and they used that idea in the movie, where there's this Lord Protector who comes in and assigns hunters to go in and start killing wolf packs. So these are all concept designs. This is just an example of how a concept design was actually converted into the final shot from the movie. And so this led to them putting together ideas. So there is a process called storyboarding, in which once they have a basic idea of a story, they start building panels like a comic book and tell the whole story through those storyboards. So here are a few examples of the storyboards that were used. The second idea was another folk tale. Now this is where the fantasy elements come in, because they don't just want to tell a story which is very grounded and realistic. They want to add some fantasy elements into it. And this is where they brought in the idea of the concept called Wolves of Osseray. So these are basically what we know as the name of the movie. These are Wolfwalkers. This is an idea where there are these individuals who can turn into wolves when they sleep. And to distinguish them from the very well-known concept of werewolves, these are not the same as werewolves. Okay, the basic differences is that to become a werewolf, the mythology is that you have to be bitten by another werewolf on a blood moon night. Okay, that kind of restriction is not here. You get bitten anytime by a wolfwalker, and you have positive energies, you turn into a wolfwalker. Secondly, anybody can become a wolfwalker. In the case of the werewolves, it's only the people who get bitten on a blood moon night become wolfwalkers. And once they become wolfwalkers, they become basically rage-filled monsters. Once they become werewolves, thank you for correcting me. Once they become werewolves, they don't have any control on their anger, and they basically become beasts and monsters, and who just know one thing: to kill people, to massacre. Whereas the wolfwalkers are actually a force of good. They are known to help people. They are known to help children who get lost in the jungle. They are known to help tradesmen who get lost in the jungle. If they go on a path and don't know their way back, they are known to heal wounded people. So through this, they are actually a guardian kind of figure, where they actually help people and bring them back to safety instead of harming them. Okay, so and they can do this at will. You know, they can just close their eyes and fall asleep, and they are able to turn into wolves.
So if they just fall asleep, even if it's during the day, or it has to be
Yeah.
at night?
No, they can fall asleep in the daytime also. So another thing that they don't have, that they don't really need a full moon to turn into wolfwalkers, as opposed to werewolves who can do that only when there's a full moon. And in their case, they don't have a choice. The moment there's a full moon and there are no clouds, just the fact that they can see the moon turns them into werewolves. So that's the basic difference between the two mythologies. That the wolves of Osri can do it at will, and they are a force of good, whereas werewolves are known to be beasts of destruction. So now I was going to talk about the synopsis of the movie, but I found this very nice clip. This is the conceptual trailer of the movie, which will basically take you through all the synopsis of the movie.
Close your eyes, let the wolf come near. Round the moon, she brings you cheer. How's the wolf? How's the wolf?
Yeah, so through the story, basically they are using the storytelling trope of when the hunter becomes the hunted. So in this case, the hunter's daughter actually turns into a wolfwalker, and then it is his dilemma about what do I do now that my own daughter is one of the creatures that I have to hunt. Moving on. So what happens is when they want to start creating an animated film, once the idea is ready, once the story is ready, once all the pre-production is done, then once they start actually making the movie, the first thing, and this is where shooting an animated movie is different from live action movie. In animated movies, you have to first record the voices. So in this case, what happens is, whereas in live action movies, they do the shooting first, and then they take it back to the sound studio and do the additional direct recording or ADR on top of that recording, or dubbing as we know it. Whereas in this case, they actually record the voices first, and then the animators animate to the voices. Okay, so I'm going to show you a clip of how the voice recording was done for this movie. Philip?
Everybody can. Well, close your eyes. You don't need your eyes to see. And you can hear every little thing that moves. And your paws can hear through the earth.
Don't you know we're stronger now? My heart still beats and my skin
And
still
you have 4 legs now, so you can run really fast and jump so high.
and my mind still feels.
Hey, wait for me.
That we're running out of time.
Keep your nose down. Be a wolf.
I'm running with the wolves tonight. I'm running with the wolves. I'm running with the wolves tonight. I'm running with the wolves. I'm running with that laughter.
You're letting them out. The forest is hours a night. Wait till you see.
I'm running with the wolves tonight. I'm running with the wolves. I'm running with that.
Do you have a mug on the go? Okay, and then so something to like short a little. Alright, let's go again. 3, 2, 1.
Give it back! Be brave! Give me that! No! Give me the hat! Give it back! Hey! Oh. There's the devil's lair. Fire at will!
Why do you have so much stuff? Hey, stop! That's me gear for hunting. Oh, a hunter? Ha! A little girl like you. Well, you're a girl too. I'm no girl. I'm a Wolfwalker. When I sleep, I'm a wolf. When I'm awake, I'm me. Live og Mactire.
Yeah, so mostly they go for all 3 movies. They have gone with a predominantly Irish cast. For some cases, like in the case of Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, they had one international artist, Brendan Gleeson, who played a voice actor. And in this case, they also had mostly Irish people, other than the father, the hunter, because he was supposed to be British. So they actually hired a British actor. His name is Sean Bean. Does that name ring any bells? Sean Bean?
Yeah.
Do you know Sean Bean?
The name rings bells, but
Sorry?
the name rings.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Sean Bean, not Sean Penn. So there's a little story behind Sean Bean. Sean Bean, if you have seen Lord of the Rings, Sean Bean is the character of Boromir, the guy who tries to take the ring away from Frodo, and then he gets shot by the Uruk-hai with 3 arrows in his chest. He is like Aragorn's best friend in the movie, but he turns. And he also played Agent 006, 006 in the Pierce Brosnan GoldenEye movie, the first Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie. The thing about this actor is that he's now known in Hollywood as an actor who mostly dies. His character, like 9 out of 10 movies that he has done, his character dies in the movie. So this is that one movie in which his character doesn't actually die. So this is a fun tidbit that of the very few movies in which Sean Bean's character doesn't die, Wolfwalkers is one of them. So that's the fun tidbit. The next thing I want to talk about is the actual production. This is when we'll go a little bit behind the scenes of how the conceptualization, all the processes happened behind the scenes of making this movie. So this is also a video, but in this case, I will be asking Philippe to pause in the middle sometimes so that I can talk about what's. Pause, please. So the first thing I want to talk about is that this movie is actually located in Kilkenny. The other movies are usually located in different places, but since this movie was actually located in Kilkenny, yeah, no problem. They actually created all the concept design from structures which are in Kilkenny. Like this is the actual castle which was used as a reference to design the castle in Wolfwalkers. Go on. These are the artists who went out and they actually built these structures based on the structures that they could see around Kilkenny. Kilkenny, of course, has a rich history of architecture that you can see here. So whether it is outdoors, indoors, people, most of the places were drawn from real spots in Kilkenny. And there's a huge difference between the way they drew the town and the way they drew the forest, and the way they drew the characters in town and the characters in the forest, which we'll explore a little later.
That looks like the movie in the daddy in Song of the Sea.
Song of the Sea. Yeah, so there is a part in the movie where there's a reference to Selkies, and Selkies are characters in Song of the Sea. So coming down to the actual design, as I mentioned, that they used two different styles for the structures that they made for the city and the way the forest was designed. So in this case, for the town, they actually went with a 16th century wood block printing technique, which was used to to create artwork, and that is the kind of artwork that they have created for these. And for the forest, they wanted to go more, not in control, free moving. Sorry, fluid, more in the flow kind of look. And so that for that they used watercolor technique, and we'll explore this a little bit more as we go ahead. So this is the basic difference between these two. Also, they kept one thing in mind, that the differences are not so vivid that it seems like they are two different movies. So they also had subtle touches which blended between these two techniques. So they didn't go too far in that direction or too far in this direction. So obviously, art is influenced by art that has been done before. So in this case, I'm going to show you a few reference points, the things that influenced the directors while they were making the movie. So they were very highly influenced by mid-era Disney movies, when the Disney movies were at their highlight. So mid-era Disney movies like Robin Hood, 101 Dalmatians, and they used references from these movies to build the town area, okay, and to do the line work and the color offset that was used to show the artwork for the town. And they referred to Winnie the Pooh for the kind of vignetting that was done in this movie. So Winnie the Pooh is in the jungle, and there's a lot of the idea, the style of vignetting is basically you create a dark uh, blend, dark kind of gradient at the outside of the frame, so that the center of the frame is highlighted. So this is called to create a vignette, and that was one of the influences that was used in the movie. They also referred to specifically to a Studio Ghibli film called The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Anybody here seen this movie? Tale of Princess Kaguya? Yeah, well, you should correct it. In fact, you should see all Studio Ghibli movies. They are fantastic. But in this case, there is a story of a princess who's like a god creature born to human, given to human people to raise. And obviously, as she's growing, she breaks out of the mold of the way we live, and she becomes one with the forest. So they've used very fluid line movement, a lot of watercolors to show her progression into becoming the fairy creature that she actually is. So they were hugely influenced by the style that was used in making this movie. Yes. So Studio Ghibli is a Japanese studio, and their style is moves a lot towards anime. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, they actually took references from the town Kilkenny, where the stories actually, like in the movie, there is a shot where when the character, the Lord Protector character, is addressing the people, he actually says people of Kilkenny, that it shows that it is actually based in this very town where they live. And as I mentioned earlier, that the artist actually went out, and as you can see, they looked at stuff and they started drawing from what they were looking at. So they were looking at these streets and they were creating artwork which looked like them. And they were looking at castles and they were creating artwork for the movie based on those references. Interiors, objects, these are all influenced by even the market. They have these shows where they create medieval markets, and they actually went to these markets to get their references for the markets in the movie. So bread sellers, fish sellers, vegetable sellers, they're all influenced by what actually happens in Kilkenny. Meat sellers. So this is another image to show you that the artist actually went out, and this is what they're looking at, and they're drawing. And various structures, architectural structure which still exist from those times, that they have not been torn down. The objects, the vehicles, and the overall look of the town was basically, as I said, again, we have to keep in mind, wood block, very, very squarish, very horizontal and vertical lines. And this was mostly used to actually show the idea that these people are not free. These people are bound by their environment. They are caged. So even even the long wide shots, you can see that, and most of the times you will see that even the characters are moving either vertically or horizontally, and not diagonally. So these tricks are used to show that they are caged. They can only go in this direction or that. They don't have any freedom.
The perspective is like from this period, like where they didn't really understand how to draw perspective.
Yes. So woodblock printing, even you see the castle, it's actually very flat. Yeah, it doesn't have any depth. So most of the scenes in this, you'll see that there's very little depth in the scenes. Okay, this is to keep it very tight, very caged, very restricted, artificial. And of course, with scenes like this, they are also showing that people are oppressed. Okay, so all these things are coming across because of the imagery that you're seeing, even though you don't realize it, but this is having that psychological effect on the viewer. And then references, so they would build these towns, and then they would populate it with people. So this is how layer by layer the concept designs are created. And these eventually become scenes in the movie. And then how the characters are existing in the environment, how they are interacting with it, light and shadows, colors, the moods of the characters depending on whether they are in stress or relaxation, sadness, gloomy weather, wanting to be outside, working away in the kitchens like slaves. So all these are initially drawn as concept designs. So, and then eventually they are redrawn for the movie. And again, so many references to people being caged or scared, whether it is outdoors, indoors. It all seems to be so claustrophobic. All the characters are also stuck in that mold. Most of the antagonist characters are all drawn as blocky shapes. And they actually used a software called After Effects, which can be used to create depth in your scene using 3D space. So After Effects has a virtual 3D space inside it, and if you place your artwork in that space, it actually creates a sense of depth, that some people are closer, some people are further. And then everything is either horizontal or vertical in these spaces. And even they give reference to people being caged by, they're showing that even the kids are playing games in which they're caging each other, bullying each other, being aggressive with each other. I'm sure, I've lived in the city. I've seen kids doing this in the city, playing aggressive games. And of course, there's a sense of sadness, there's a sense of aggression. Okay, so like I said, that they didn't want to go in. Question, sorry. Yes.
The question is this wood block printing.
Yeah.
So they actually, like you do it in fabric, you actually make a wood print out of wood and then you print it onto it? Or?
No. They're just mimicking the style. Okay. They are doing, all this is done on paper. So they are drawing everything on paper and then scanning those to make them digital to use as backgrounds.
So this is a technique, they call it?
It's a style. It's a style of drawing. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, that they didn't want to stick to one style or the other. So they have actually created spaces between the forest and the town, which blend from very, very hard to slowly getting softer. Okay, so that the change is not very jarring. So they basically had crop fields outside and grazing fields outside the town, which would slowly take people away from very, very blocky to slowly becoming more chaotic, more not in control kind of scenario. And as you move away from the town, you can see that the blockiness slowly, steadily becomes more flowing, more fluid, and more watercolory.
All of these are concept drawings.
Yeah, and most of them were converted into actual shots in the movie, maybe used in the backgrounds. Okay. And then all these are designed. So if you look at the town from the forest, you can see that it's all blocky, whereas this is all, and vignetting. Vignetting was again something that the outsides are a bit dark, the center is a bit light.
Yeah, the mix is quite brilliant, I think, between those two styles.
Yeah. And then as you slowly get into the forest, you'll see that the lines are not very clean now. They are all jaggery, and it looks like somebody has scribbled rather than somebody has drawn clean lines, So this is the major difference, that it's more fluid, more watercolory, more. So as I'll show you a few more references. So these are all concept designs which were done for the movie. And through the use of watercolors, they have the scenes in the forest are more bright. Whereas as you see, the scenes in the town are more dull. The range of colors that they've used, the temperatures are very muted. They are very close to each other. Whereas the contrast between the color temperatures increase as you go into the forest. Yeah, even and as the wolves are part of the jungle, they are also drawn in such a way that they blend into the forest. So here is a classical example of how a concept design is: first the line work is done, the shading is done, and once they know which areas are bright and dark, they put in the colors, and then there are some visual effects done like smoke and sun rays and whatnot on top of that, and a lot of symbolism in the movie. And one of the major things is that how did they contrast between the character reaching the forest first and then eventually becoming a wolfwalker. So you'll see that eventually there is a difference in style of drawing her as her story progresses, which I'll show you. So you can see that as she becomes more and more part of the forest, the lines that are used for drawing her become more sketchy rather than very clean lines. And her interactions with the wolfwalker, slowly, steadily, her lines become very loose. These are very early concept drawings. And just look at this frame where they meet in the city. You can see that her lines are very clean, very neat, whereas her lines are very, very scribbly, very, very loose. And this was something that in an interview, one of the character designers spoke about how they struggled doing this, because usually character designs are done that they're drawn roughly, and then there is a cleanup artist who will sit and clean up all the lines. Whereas in this case, they had to, for the forest, the entire the characters and the backgrounds, they had to keep it loose. So the cleanup artist had to unlearn some of the things that they had learned so that they could. So it was a big struggle for them, for the character designers.